What's good, family? It's your boy Old Soul J, and I'm back with another video. I'm about to give y'all an easy way for you to be able to tell what level of consciousness a person's on, or if a person's really conscious at all. A telltale sign of how conscious a person really is how they react to philosophical sayings. Something as simple as philosophy. I actually went to a philosophy class last year. Let me give y'all a little backstory before I even get into this. Why philosophical sayings even came to my mind, and how I feel like it's a good indicator whether a person is actually somewhat conscious or not, is how they react to philosophical sayings. So over a year ago, actually 2 years ago, it's 2 years now, time flies, but 2 years ago, if you're from New York, you might have seen it before. I kept seeing these signs everywhere, these posters everywhere talking about a philosophy class, and the picture was a person meditating, and it was saying to sign up. Now, at this time, I didn't really know people in my personal life who were spiritual, so to speak, or who even meditated. Not to say that philosophy is spirituality, but the fact that it showed a picture of someone meditating, I at least figured the people who would go to that class would be somewhat more on my type of timing. So I said, you know what? Let me experience that. Let me go be around some people who are actually on this type of timing. It's in my face right now. The classes were literally $1 a class. And on top of that, at the very least, if I don't meet anyone who I resonate with and connect with, at the very least, the topics that we're going to be talking about is things that I'm into. At the very least, there was no losing in the situation. I only seen benefit out of it. So I went. And a lot of the things they were talking about were a lot of the things that I used to look into, or I was into, or heard about. Years before I came to the class, I felt like I was a little bit more advanced. Not to big up my ego, but I was a little bit more just consciously advanced than what they were actually teaching. It was more like a beginner's philosophy type of class. But I did meet some very deep-minded individuals who were very interested in what was being spoken about. And I did actually connect with someone in that class who actually became one of the best people I've ever met in my life. Someone that to this day is one of my favorite people that I've ever met. But that's besides the point. When I told people that I was going to a philosophy class, a lot of people, they just didn't understand. Like people that were outside of the class, people that I already knew in my personal life, they didn't understand. They thought it was odd. Why? Why would they think it's odd or weird? Because I've said this in the past. Weird just means you don't understand it. You don't understand why or what the reasoning for something. So you think it's weird. Anytime I call something weird, it's just because I don't understand it. If I think a person is weird or they did something weird, it doesn't make sense to me why they would do something like that. Simple. So yes, it was odd or weird to most people because you generally don't hear about a person, at least the type of people I grew up around, going to a philosophy class. It wasn't like it was college. It wasn't college. It wasn't like psychology or something like that. This was literally its own thing. You signed up for it online and paid $1 each class, at least for the first 10 classes, right? Some of the things that are being said there, if I said those things to a person who is vibrating on a low frequency, they're small-minded, not really open-minded, or their consciousness level is just very low, their reaction will tell you a lot. If I'm talking to that type of person, they're not gonna really have a positive reaction. It's not really gonna resonate. They're not really vibrating on that frequency. They're not gonna feel it in their heart. They're not gonna be receptive to it. At the very least, they just won't care. They might think it's silly. They might think it's weird or something. But now if I said it to someone who is self-aware or consciously on a certain level or is open-minded, it will at the very least make them think. It will make them think. You might spark a conversation. They might have their own viewpoints on that philosophical quote. They might have a perspective on it. If they have a high consciousness level, they'll completely understand it and have their own example or in their own words, they will explain to you what that means. They might even feel it deep in their heart. But philosophy is just scratching the surface. But if a person is not even receptive to that, that's a good way to fill a person out. Hit them with some philosophical sayings. See how they react to it. If they don't react to that in a positive way, then if you're on a deeper level than that, then they're just gonna think you're crazy. If you come out with anything deeper, they're gonna think you're crazy, or they're really gonna think you're weird. They're not there. So philosophy is for the thinkers, deep thinkers. A person is definitely not on a high conscious level or even spiritual if they don't have a deep mind, if they don't think deeply. So that's a good way to indicate whether a person is even worth that type of energy, that type of conversation, that type of attention. Or you might have to dumb yourself down. If not, you'll have to dumb yourself down to even interact with that person. But eventually you and that person's frequencies, you guys won't really get along because y'all not on the same vibration and those frequencies don't match, and they're gonna repel each other because you'll have to keep dumbing yourself down, because it's easier to be pulled down than to be pulled up. So they're more likely gonna pull you down consciously than you're gonna pull them up consciously. So it's easier to just let it go. But yeah, that right there is just a great indicator to gauge where a person is consciously. If they're at the very least on the surface level, then they'll be able to relate to philosophical sayings. Because a lot of those philosophical sayings to me are like common sense once you lived a little bit here in this life, in this world. But to each his own. That's all I gotta say for this video. Make sure you like and subscribe. I got a lot more content on the way. I love y'all.